Hey, church family, I wanted to come to you for a few minutes today via video and give you a few thoughts that I have coming away from the Southern Baptist Convention that took place last week in New Orleans. As always, it is a privilege that I don't take lightly for you to entrust me to be a messenger from our church to the Southern Baptist Convention each and every year. I know my wife Christy joined me this year as a messenger, as well as Stephen and Jennifer Folker, and we're just grateful for the opportunity to represent Taylor Road Baptist Church as messengers to the Southern Baptist Convention. This year, just like the last few years, obviously there's a lot of talk and a lot of chatter around the Southern Baptist Convention annual meeting, and this year obviously was no different. And so I want to start by saying, first of all, the reason I'm doing a video, a lot of times in the years past, I've done a letter, just kind of a written summary to our church about the Southern Baptist Convention meeting. This year, I felt like a video was probably due because of just a lot that's come out of the meeting, the convention, and a lot of chatter around the convention this year. Just felt like I could probably express my views and my reflections better through video. Also, want to just make sure that you understand not everything you read on the internet is accurate. Or is objective or anything like that. So if you've read, that the sky is falling and that the Southern Baptist Convention is near its end and all of these things, don't buy into the hype. Don't buy into the hysteria. There's so much to be celebrated. In fact, one of the things that we celebrated while we were in New Orleans is the commissioning of 79 new missionaries through the International Mission Board. And we got to hear an introduction and a little bit about each one of those. And that's always my favorite part of the convention. But this year, again, just at this commissioning, and there's several throughout the year as they finish training, but just at the convention alone, we commissioned 79 new missionaries to go into the nations with the gospel of Jesus. That is something to be proud of. That's something to celebrate as Southern Baptists. We also heard a fantastic report from the North American Mission Board and a statistic that since 2010, so over the last 13 years, 10,000 new churches have been started. And by the year 2030, so 7 years from now, 1/3 of Southern Baptist churches will be church plants from 2010 beyond. I mean, think about that. Over the span of 20 years, from 2010 to 2030, 1/3, by 2030, 1/3 of Southern Baptist churches will be churches planted within that 20-year period. It's just, God is doing amazing things. Lottie Moon and Annie Armstrong have never been stronger. Our 6 Southern Baptist seminaries are just so strong and training up men and women for gospel ministry and gospel work. As your pastor, who I also have the great privilege of serving as a trustee to Gateway Seminary, I can tell you Gateway is doing a fantastic work on the West Coast with pastors and church planters and missionaries. It's just, God has blessed the Southern Baptist Convention. Now, will you read all that in news stories and tweets and posts and blogs? Probably not. You're going to read negative stuff because that seems to be what is clickbait, right? The negative headlines and the negative things. This year, in the last few years, we've dealt with the sexual abuse scandal and the things surrounding that within the Southern Baptist Convention. That obviously has not gone away. It's not going to go away. We're still dealing with that. We heard a report from the Sexual Abuse Task Force, and I know you can find that online as well and through their website. But this year, the conversation began to shift a little bit more, and it began really last year at last year's convention in Anaheim, California, with the Credentials Committee of the Southern Baptist Convention. It's a committee that's kind of been established and given authority, if you will, if a church is not found in friendly cooperation with the Southern Baptist Convention. The Credentials Committee will We'll investigate that and do due diligence, and then bring that church before the convention the following year with all of the evidence, and then the messengers, we vote on whether or not we believe that that church is in friendly cooperation with the Southern Baptist Convention. Last year, Saddleback Church made news. Rick Warren made news because actually a couple of years ago they ordained 3 women and named at least 2 of them, I think, as campus pastors at some of their campus locations. This obviously started a firestorm within the Southern Baptist Convention, and the Credentials Committee looked into it and did due diligence to bring them to a vote this year as to whether we believe they are in friendly cooperation with the Southern Baptist Convention. Now, let me just push pause right there. As your pastor, I feel like it's important for me to do some explaining around the biblical view. There are 2 views in Christianity and in theology doctrine when it comes to the role of women, particularly in ministry. There is what is called the complementarian view, which says we believe that men and women are created equally by God. There is no difference in value or worth, both in the image of God with great value and worth, and one is not subservient to the other. But complementarianism also says, while we believe that there is an identical worth and same value, there are different roles. And God has established the local church to be pastored by a male. Just like there's male headship in the home that's designed by God in Genesis chapters 1 and 2, we believe that the New Testament's clear that while men and women both have equal contributions to the kingdom and kingdom work, that the office of pastor is reserved for male leadership. So that's complementarianism. Egalitarianism is the opposite view that says all across the board, men and women are equal, and women can hold the office of pastor, elder, overseer, just like a man can. So you've got complementarianism and egalitarianism. Unashamedly, I am complementarian. The Taylor Road Baptist Church has been historically complementarian. If I had to guess, most of you who grew up in a Southern Baptist church particularly, the views there were complementarian. So you've got 2 opposing views, complementarianism, egalitarianism. Rick Warren has come out and clearly said that he is an egalitarian, and he has no problem making women pastors over some of their campus locations. So they were brought to the convention this year to be voted upon, along with another church in Louisville, Kentucky, whose senior pastor is a woman. These 2 churches were brought to the convention to be voted upon as to whether or not we believe that they are in friendly cooperation with the Southern Baptist Convention. So what does that mean? Basically, if we voted that they were not in friendly cooperation, that means that they would not be allowed messengers to the Southern Baptist Convention. Basically, we don't identify with them, and they're not in our convention of churches. We don't consider them part of that convention of churches. So, again, Saddleback and this Fern Creek in Kentucky were both brought to the convention to be voted upon. Now, what, again, friendly cooperation, and how do we decide that? Well, just like every good organization, the Southern Baptist Convention has a constitution and bylaws. And within the Southern Baptist Convention Constitution, in Article 3, that's titled Composition, basically it's talking about what composes the Southern Baptist Convention. There are 5 points that basically in the Constitution say if you want to be considered a Southern Baptist church, you have to be in agreement and cooperate along these 5 points. And you can, I'll try to put the link here at the bottom of the screen. But again, these are 5 points of agreement and cooperation if you want to be in friendly cooperation with the Southern Baptist Convention. Now, number one, the first point in Article 3 is this, that if you want to be in cooperation with the Southern Baptist Convention, then as a church, you must have a faith and practice. This is number one, a faith and practice which closely identifies with the convention's adopted statement of faith. Now, what is the convention's adopted statement of faith? Well, it's the Baptist Faith and Message of 2000. You can go to our website, taylorroad.org/beliefs, and you can see the full layout of the Baptist Faith and Message. So, Article 3, number one, if you want to be a cooperating church within the Southern Baptist Convention, you must have a faith and practice that adheres to the convention's statement of faith, which is the Baptist Faith and Message, which in the Baptist Faith and Message, Article 6, under the heading, The Church, it says this, that the church's scriptural officers are pastors and deacons. While both men and women are gifted for service in the church, the office of pastor is limited to men as qualified by Scripture. That's a perfect picture of complementarianism. But qualified men are those who can hold the office of pastor. So we get back to Saddleback and Fern Creek, and really the argument, their point of difference is, what does it mean to be a pastor? What does it mean to be a pastor? Is that the senior pastor? This is where Rick Warren was kind of differing? Is this can it be a woman who's serving in a ministerial role over a campus, but yet she's under the oversight of a body of elders that are male elders, and just so forth and so on. But we voted as a convention to basically say, no, you're not in friendly cooperation with the Southern Baptist Convention. And so Fern Creek and Saddleback were both found not in friendly cooperation. They were disfellowshipped. And it broke my heart to do that. I mean, especially Saddleback. It broke my heart to cast that vote. But I felt that was the right and biblical thing to do. So that was really the first big issue. But that sparked a second issue. And that second issue was an amendment proposed by a pastor named Mike Law from Virginia, who, again, proposed an amendment to our Constitution to clarify, in his words, clarify and make it unequivocally clear where we stand as complementarians and where we stand on the basis and foundation of Scripture. And so Mike Law's amendment, basically, I said just a minute ago that there are 5 points in the Constitution of the SBC at which churches need to agree and adhere to in order to be found in friendly cooperation. Mike Law said, let's add a 6th clarification. Let's add a 6th point. And that 6th point, he argued, was basically just to reaffirm the Baptist faith and message. And that 6th point, he argued, and that was tweaked a little bit by a pastor named Juan Sanchez. But their amendment that they proposed is that a Southern Baptist church to be found in friendly cooperation, that this 6th point would say that that churches must affirm, appoint, or employ only men as any kind of pastor or elder as qualified by Scripture. So again, this is the 6th point of agreement that is being proposed to amend our Constitution, that churches would affirm, appoint, or employ only men as any kind of pastor or elder as qualified by Scripture. Now, as your pastor, I want to just share my heart about this for a second. And again, I'm asking you, church, don't post this on social media. Don't share. This is between us, because I'm your pastor. You're the church, and this is a conversation. My door's always open. You got my phone number. You got my email address. I'd love to talk to you about this. If you've got questions or concerns, I'd love to sit down over a cup of coffee or lunch or whatever, and let's talk through this. I voted in favor of this amendment, but in hindsight, I was torn in that room. I was torn, and I'll tell you why. But in hindsight, I regret voting for this amendment. And I know it may sound like I'm going back on my complementarian views. I'm not. I am complementarian. I'm not egalitarian. But the language of this amendment concerns me because it says that basically churches are not to be found in friendly cooperation, not to hire or employ women as pastors of any kind, only men of any kind of pastor as qualified by Scripture. Now you get into this kind of muddy water. In the Scriptures, there's two words in the Greek language in the New Testament that we get our English word pastor from. The first is found in 1 Timothy when Paul is laying out the qualifications for a pastor, and you're familiar with those. The word that Paul uses there is presbyteros, and that word presbyteros is of an office, the office of pastor, those who hold the office of pastor. The other word that's used in the Scripture is poimenos, which means shepherding. And it's oftentimes translated pastor. So that would be the gift of a pastor, the gift of ministry. And so in English, we've got the same word, pastor, and one is used for office, and one is used for a gifting or a ministry, a service. And I believe that this amendment continues not to clarify, but to blur the line. I believe, again, according to Scripture, that the office of pastor, the presbyteros within the local church, the office of elder, overseer, senior pastor, if you will, is reserved for male, those who are qualified by Scripture and who are male. However, we have different ministers in churches who are female. Taylor Road Baptist Church. Stephanie Holmes is our children's minister. Now, some people say, well, we should call her a children's director. Why? She's ministering to children. She's ministering to families. I think, personally, my personal conviction, I've grown up Southern Baptist all my life. I've been in church all my life. I believe that we have been very flippant with the title pastor. Right? We've got student pastors, we got worship pastors, we've got senior pastors, we've got this, we've got that. And so, first of all, I am concerned that in the past we have been a little flippant with the title pastor. The Bible only says, in the New Testament, there's only one kind of pastor, and that is the presbyteros. That is the elder, overseer of the local church. Like we invented later down the road, we invented worship ministers and youth ministers and children's ministers, and on and on and on and on. And so maybe we've made a mistake in the past by assigning the title of worship pastor, youth pastor, because again, we're blurring the lines a little bit. But my concern is that there are churches in our Southern Baptist Convention who don't have women as the senior pastor, but they do have a female discipleship pastor or worship pastor, or maybe they call their female children's ministry a children's pastor or youth pastor. That means, according to this amendment, again, pastor of any kind, that means those churches need to be disfellowshipped. That means that we need to, they don't have women in the senior pastor role, but they have that title pastor attached to them. And we can argue whether or not they should all day long. But that means that a lot of churches, there's going to be a witch hunt. And there's a lot of churches that are going to be found not in friendly cooperation because they have support ministerial staff who are females with the pastor, women's pastor. And the other issue I have is if it's the gifting, you know, we call Stephanie the children's minister, but she's doing the work of a pastor. She's doing the gift. She has the gifting of shepherding and pastoring. And so really, she's doing the same thing as if we called her the children's pastor. It's just the name. It's just the title. And so all of this is to say that I'm disappointed, and I'm a little confused in terms of where we go next as a convention. I believe that women have so much value to the work of the church and the kingdom. I mean, think about the two offerings that we celebrate as Southern Baptists annually are named after women. Lottie Moon, Annie Armstrong. I mean, come on. Some of the most gifted teachers in the church are women. At least from my perspective, and as your pastor, this is not to demean women or to give them the back seat or whatever. I am concerned, though, again, that we've opened up a Pandora's box, and where we go next, I don't know. Now, let me make sure that we're clear here as well. The Constitution of the Southern Baptist Convention is not changed. It takes two majority votes in a row. So this year was number one. Next year will be number two. If I had to vote right now, I would vote against it this time, just because of the muddiness of the water. Nobody's arguing that women should be senior pastors, and if they are, man, they're on the fringe anyway. They don't really want to be Southern Baptist anyway. But now we're getting into the weeds of what other ministers within the church do, and if they're women, do we call the youth minister the youth pastor? And if it's a female children's minister, we just call her children's minister because we don't like putting the word pastor on the end there. They do the same job. So I'm just a little concerned about where this is going. And so just be prayerful. And again, I'd love to have a conversation with you about this in the future. If you know where to find me and how we can have that conversation. But be praying for our Southern Baptist Convention. I will say this, and as I close, I know I've rambled for 21 minutes, almost 22. So if you've stuck with me this long, congratulations. What happens on a weekly and daily basis at churches, just like Taylor Road Baptist Church, that's the Southern Baptist Convention. The fact that we had over 200 people and kids on our campus for the first day of Bible school today, that's the Southern Baptist Convention. The fact that we are sending mission teams all over North America and all over the world with the gospel, that's the Southern Baptist Convention. So don't get caught up in all the stuff that you read on the internet. The Southern Baptist Convention, it actually only exists once a year, and that's at the annual meeting. It's just a bunch of like-minded churches serving Jesus and serving their cities and taking the gospel to the nations. And so let's celebrate the good, the kingdom work that's being done, and just leave the rest to God. So I love you, church. Again, if you have any questions or you'd like to talk about it, just let me know and we'll do that. Love you, and we'll see you soon.